Chen Wei-ming's weathered hands trembled as porcelain shards scattered across the worn wooden floor of his tea shop. The amber liquid spread between the cracks, reflecting the glow from his phone screen where the video played on endless loop. 8 seconds that shattered 15 years of carefully constructed peace. The drunk extra, a nobody seeking 15 minutes of fame, had thrown his drink with the sloppy aggression of someone who'd never faced real violence. But Jackie's response... Chen's breath caught in his throat, the way his former student's weight shifted to his back foot, the subtle rotation of his shoulders, the precise angle of his deflecting hand. It was textbook, silent thunder. First form, opening movement, executed with a fluidity that spoke of months, maybe years of practice. The tea shop's bell chimed as the evening wind pushed through Chinatown's narrow streets. Chen barely heard it. He was 17 again, kneeling in his master's hidden courtyard in the mountains of Shaolin, watching those same movements demonstrated for the first time. "This knowledge is a burden," Master Lu had warned, his ancient voice carrying the weight of generations. "It changes the practitioner. Defense becomes offense. Protection becomes something else." Chen had dismissed the warnings then, drunk on his own potential. Young, arrogant, convinced he could master anything. He'd learned every form, every deadly sequence, and when Hollywood came calling in the 80s, he'd brought that knowledge with him like a loaded weapon he promised never to fire. The promise had held for 30 years, through countless films, endless fight choreographies, training dozens of action stars, including a young Jackie Chan who'd arrived in America with raw talent and an insatiable hunger to learn. Chen had taught him everything except silent thunder. He'd been so careful, so precise in what knowledge he shared and what he kept locked away, until that night in 2004. Chen closed his eyes, but the memories came anyway. His son Dao Ming, 23 and fearless, executing a wire stunt that should have been routine. The harness failure that happened in slow motion, gravity claiming his boy, while Chen watched helplessly from the director's chair. The funeral where Jackie had wept openly, promising Chen that Dao Ming's death wouldn't be in vain, that they'd make films that honored his memory. That was the last time Chen had spoken to Jackie, the last time he'd set foot on a movie set, the last time he'd been anyone other than a broken old man selling tea to tourists who saw him as just another piece of Chinatown's scenery. But someone had taught Jackie the forbidden forms. Chen rewound the video again, studying each frame with the obsessive focus that had once made him Hollywood's most sought-after choreographer. The extra's drink arced through the air, some kind of energy drink, sticky and orange. Jackie's response was instantaneous but not theatrical. This wasn't movie fighting. His left hand swept up in the classic thunder block, deflecting the liquid while his right hand moved in the preparatory stance for lightning palm. The crowd saw a graceful, defensive movement. Chen saw the setup for a killing blow that Jackie had pulled back at the last second. The cameraman had zoomed in on Jackie's face during those crucial 8 seconds. What Chen saw there made his blood run cold. The empty calm of someone accessing muscle memory so deep it bypassed conscious thought. The look of a practitioner surrendering to the form, letting silent thunder flow through him like water through a broken dam. Master Lu's warnings echoed across the decades. The forms change you from the inside out. Each movement teaches your body to think in terms of maximum damage. Practice them long enough, and eventually, you forget how to hold back. Chen's phone buzzed with notifications. The video was going viral. Jackie Chan's amazing reflexes, but none of the comments understood what they were actually seeing. To them, it was just another demonstration of Jackie's legendary skills. They had no idea they'd witnessed something that should have died with Master Lu in 1987. The question that burned through Chen's mind was simple and terrifying. Who else knew? Silent thunder wasn't written down anywhere. It lived only in the memory of those few students Master Lu had deemed worthy, and most of them were dead. Chen had sworn never to pass it on, especially after seeing what it had done to his own temperament in the years before Dao Ming's death. The forms made him harder, colder, quicker to see violence as a solution. He'd watched it happen to other practitioners too. Good men who'd learned silent thunder and slowly transformed into something else. The knowledge was seductive, the promise of being untouchable, unbeatable. But the cost was always the same. You became the weapon you carried. Now Jackie was walking that same path, and Chen was the only one who recognized the signs. The old master stood slowly, his knees protesting after decades of punishing training. Porcelain crunched under his feet as he moved to the window, watching the neon lights of Chinatown flicker to life against the gathering darkness. Somewhere out there, someone was playing a game Chen didn't understand yet. But he was going to find out who, even if it meant returning to a world he'd sworn to leave behind forever. Chen stood at the window for a long time, watching Grant Avenue transform into its nightly theater of tourists and locals. The familiar rhythm of Chinatown's evening pulse usually brought him comfort. Vendors closing their stalls, restaurant workers heading home with plastic bags of leftover dim sum, elderly men gathering in Portsmouth Square for their final chess games before darkness settled in completely. Tonight, it all felt distant, like watching life through frosted glass. His reflection stared back at him, superimposed over the street scene. When had he gotten so old? The man in the window bore little resemblance to the Chen Wei-ming who'd once commanded respect on Hollywood sets, who'd choreographed fights for legends, whose approval could make or break an action star's career. This version was smaller somehow, worn down by 15 years of self-imposed exile and the weight of carrying his son's death. Behind him, the tea shop held its breath. The space had become his sanctuary and his prison. Narrow aisles lined with ceramic jars containing oolong and pu'er, jasmine and dragon well. Each morning he arranged the same displays, brewed the same samples, made small talk with the same customers, who saw him as a harmless old man who knew interesting stories about the old country. They had no idea that these weathered hands had once guided Jackie Chan through his first Hollywood fight sequence, or that the gentle shopkeeper who measured their tea leaves had choreographed some of the most memorable action scenes of the past 3 decades. The bell above the door chimed, and Chen turned to see Mrs. Huang shuffling in with her evening shopping bag. 72 years old, a widow who'd been coming to his shop twice a week for the past decade. She spoke to him in Cantonese, her voice carrying the particular loneliness of someone whose children had moved to the suburbs and visited twice a year. "Wei-ming, you look troubled tonight," she said, setting down her bag and examining his face with the sharp attention of someone who'd raised 5 children and buried a husband. "Your qi is disturbed." Chen forced a smile, automatically reaching for her usual blend. "Just tired, Mrs. Huang. Long day." But she was right. His qi was disturbed, thrown off balance by the video that had shattered his carefully maintained peace. He measured the tea leaves with practiced precision, each movement a meditation that usually centered him. Tonight, even this simple ritual felt hollow. Mrs. Huang accepted the small paper bag, but her eyes remained fixed on his face. "My grandson showed me something on his phone today. A video of that actor, the one who does his own stunts, Jackie Chan. You knew him once, didn't you?" Chen's hand paused over the register. Mrs. Huang was one of the few customers who knew fragments of his past, though he'd never shared the full story. She'd noticed the framed photograph he kept behind the counter, him and Jackie on the set of Drunken Master 2, both of them young and invincible, grinning at the camera like they owned the world. "I did," he said carefully. "A long time ago." She nodded, studying him with the intuition of someone who'd lived through wars and revolutions, who understood that some truths were too heavy to speak aloud. The past has a way of finding us, even when we think we've buried it deep enough. After she left, Chen found himself staring at that photograph. He'd taken it down countless times over the years, intending to pack it away with the other remnants of his former life. But something always stopped him, perhaps because it captured a moment before everything went wrong, before pride and perfectionism consumed him, before the forbidden knowledge he carried began eating away at his soul like acid. Jackie had been so young in that photo, maybe 28, his face bright with the joy of someone living his dream. He'd hung on Chen's every word, absorbed every technique with the desperate hunger of a street kid who'd clawed his way from Hong Kong's slums to international stardom. In those early years, their relationship had been more than teacher and student. It was father and son, master and devoted disciple, until the night Chen lost his actual son and everything turned to ash. The tea shop's air conditioning cycled on, stirring the hanging herbs Mrs. Chen had insisted he display for good luck. Ginseng and goji berries, dried chrysanthemums, and bitter melon. She'd been gone 3 years now, a heart attack that took her while she slept, but her touches remained throughout the shop like small ghosts of the life they'd built together. She'd never known about Silent Thunder, about the knowledge that lived in his muscle memory like a virus waiting to activate. She'd only known the gentle man who made her laugh, who rubbed her feet after long days and promised they'd see their grandchildren grow up. Chen touched the jade pendant at his throat, a gift from Dao Ming for his 50th birthday. His son's calligraphy was etched into the stone, strength and stillness. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd found stillness, but at the cost of everything that had once given his life meaning. Now someone was threatening even this fragile peace. The knock came at 9:47 p.m., 3 sharp raps against the back door that led to the alley behind Grant Avenue. Chen froze at the sound, his hand still gripping the jade pendant. In 15 years of running the tea shop, no one had ever used that entrance after hours. The tourists stuck to the front door during business hours, and the locals knew he closed at 9. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. Chen moved through the narrow space between his shelves, each step deliberate despite the tremor that had started in his chest. Through the frosted glass he could make out a silhouette, tall, lean, wearing what looked like an expensive jacket, not a vagrant or a lost customer. "Mr. Chen?" The voice was young, American accented, but carried an undertone of respect that reminded him of the film students who used to seek him out in his Hollywood days. "My name is David Kim. I need to speak with you about Jackie Chan." Chen's blood turned to ice water. He pressed his palm against the cool metal of the door, feeling his pulse hammer against his wrist. After 15 years of anonymity, of being invisible in plain sight, someone had found him. Someone who knew. "Shop is closed," he called out, his voice steadier than he felt. "I know what you saw in that video today." The words cut through the door like a blade. "I know you recognized the Silent Thunder forms, and I know you're the only person alive who can explain what's happening to Jackie." The jade pendant felt suddenly heavy against Chen's throat. He closed his eyes, seeing again Jackie's empty calm, the preparatory stance for lightning palm, the way his former student had almost let the forbidden knowledge take control. "I don't know what you're talking about." A soft laugh from the other side of the door. "Mr. Chen, with respect, I've been researching you for 8 months. I know you were Master Lu Zhaojun's student. I know you brought the Silent Thunder forms to America in 1982. I know you taught Jackie everything except the forbidden techniques." A pause. "And I know your son died during filming of Shanghai Storm in 2004, and that you blamed yourself for not being careful enough with the knowledge you carried." Chen's legs nearly buckled. Shanghai Storm. The film's title had never been released publicly. The studio had shelved it after Dao Ming's death, burying the project so deep that most people forgot it ever existed. Only a handful of people would know that name, and most of them were dead. His hand moved to the deadbolt without conscious decision. David Kim was younger than his voice suggested, maybe 30, with the intense eyes of someone who'd seen too much too early. He held a leather messenger bag against his chest like armor, and when he stepped into the shop's dim light, Chen noticed the expensive camera equipment visible through the partially open flap. "Filmmaker," Chen said. It wasn't a question. "Documentary filmmaker. I've been investigating martial arts lineages for my master's thesis at USC. Traditional knowledge that's being lost as the old masters pass away." David's gaze swept across the tea shop, taking in the herbs, the simple wooden shelves, the careful ordinariness of it all. "I never expected to find something like this." Chen moved back behind his counter, needing the familiar barrier between himself and this young man who'd somehow excavated secrets that should have stayed buried. "What do you want?" David set his bag down carefully and withdrew a tablet. The screen showed a still frame from a different video. Jackie in what looked like a private training session, moving through forms that made Chen's mouth go dry. Advanced Silent Thunder. 4th level, maybe 5th. Techniques that took years to master safely. This was filmed 3 weeks ago at a private gym in Los Angeles. Someone leaked it to me anonymously. David's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Mr. Chen!" Jackie's been practicing these forms for at least 2 years, maybe longer. Whoever's teaching him is pushing him too fast, too hard. He's starting to lose himself. The tablet screen showed Jackie executing the Falling Thunder sequence, a combination so deadly that Master Lu had only demonstrated it once, warning that it could kill an opponent with a single touch. But what terrified Chen wasn't the technique, it was Jackie's face. The same empty calm from the viral video, but deeper now, more complete. The look of a man surrendering his will to something older and hungrier than human consciousness. "Who sent you this?" Chen's voice came out as barely a whisper. "I don't know. The files appeared in my Dropbox with your address and a message. The old master must see what his silence has cost." David leaned forward, his eyes bright with desperate intensity. "Mr. Chen, Jackie's in danger, real danger. And you're the only one who understands what Silent Thunder can do to someone who learns it wrong." Chen stared at the screen, watching Jackie move through forms that could reshape a man's soul. After 15 years of hiding, the past had finally found him. And this time, running wasn't an option. His fragile peace shattered like porcelain against stone. Chen's hands trembled as he reached for the tablet, his fingers hovering over the power button like it might burn him. "Turn it off." David pulled the device back, his expression shifting from hope to confusion. "Mr. Chen, you need to see—" "I said turn it off." The words erupted with more force than Chen had intended, echoing off the ceramic jars like a physical blow. David flinched, and Chen immediately felt the familiar shame that had haunted him since Dao Ming's death. Always too harsh, too quick to anger when the stakes felt high. The Silent Thunder forms had left their mark on him long before his son died. "I'm sorry," Chen said, forcing his voice lower, "but I can't help you. I don't do that anymore." David's eyes narrowed with the persistence Chen remembered from young filmmakers who'd once pestered him for interviews. "Someone is destroying Jackie from the inside out, and you're worried about your tea business?" The accusation hit like a slap. Chen turned away, busying himself with straightening already perfect rows of jasmine tea. "You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me." "No." The word came out flat, final. Chen had spent 15 years perfecting that tone, the voice of a man who'd closed a door and thrown away the key. "Find someone else." But David didn't leave. Instead, he pulled out his phone, fingers moving rapidly across the screen. "While I was researching you, I made some calls. Found other people who knew you in the old days." Chen's blood chilled. "What people?" "Stunt coordinator named Tommy Wu. Said he worked with you on 6 films in the 90s. David's voice took on a carefully neutral tone that somehow made it more threatening. "He wouldn't talk about you at first, but when I mentioned Silent Thunder, he hung up. Called me back 10 minutes later, told me to stop asking questions about things that could get people hurt." The tin of Dragon Well tea slipped from Chen's fingers, clattering against the counter. Tommy Wu. They'd been close once. Close enough that Tommy might have picked up fragments of the forbidden knowledge just from proximity. If someone was targeting people connected to Silent Thunder, then I called Maria Santos. Remember her? Assistant Director on Fists of Lightning. She wouldn't even let me finish explaining why I was calling. Just said, "Tell Chen Wei Ming that some debts can't be paid by hiding," and hung up. Chen's legs felt unsteady. Maria had been in the room when Master Lu visited the set in 1995, had seen the old master demonstrate the Thunder Block sequence that Chen later incorporated into Jackie's fight choreography. She'd understood enough to recognize danger when it found her. And then there was Richard Park. "Stop." Chen gripped the counter, his knuckles white against the dark wood. "Just stop." David pocketed his phone, watching Chen with the intensity of a documentarian who'd stumbled onto something bigger than his original story. "They're scared, Mr. Chen, all of them. Scared of what's happening to Jackie, scared of whoever's pulling the strings, scared of getting pulled back into something they thought was finished." The shop felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in like the set of a low-budget kung fu film. Chen could smell the herbs, the lingering incense from Mrs. Huang's visit, the faint mustiness of old wood and older secrets. For 15 years, this space had been his refuge. Now it felt like a trap. "You have no idea what you're playing with," Chen said, his voice barely audible. "Then tell me." David leaned forward, his young face earnest and desperate. Because right now, all I know is that Jackie Chan is learning techniques that are changing him into someone else, and the people who could help him are too terrified to speak. Chen closed his eyes, seeing Tommy's face from their last conversation in 2004. They'd been standing outside the hospital where Dao Ming's body lay, waiting for transport to the funeral home. Tommy had gripped Chen's shoulder and whispered, "Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. Some knowledge is too dangerous to use, even for revenge." But Chen hadn't been thinking of revenge then. He'd been thinking of erasure, of running so far from the martial arts world that no one would ever again be hurt by the deadly knowledge he carried. Now that world had found him anyway, and the fear in his old colleagues' voices suggested something worse than his own guilt was hunting them. "The person who sent you that footage," Chen said, opening his eyes to meet David's gaze. "They didn't just want me to see what Jackie has become. They wanted me to know that my silence has consequences, that hiding hasn't protected anyone." David nodded slowly. "So, what do we do?" Chen stared at the tablet's blank screen, seeing his own reflection distorted in the black surface. Somewhere in Los Angeles, Jackie was practicing forms that could consume his soul. Somewhere else, someone who understood Silent Thunder was orchestrating a game that Chen didn't yet comprehend. And here in this small tea shop, a frightened old man faced the choice he'd been running from for 15 years. The silence stretched between them like a held breath. Chen's reflection wavered in the tablet's dark screen, and for a moment he saw not the weathered tea shop owner, but the man he'd been 15 years ago, Master Chen Wei-Ming, whose name could open any door in Hollywood, whose approval Jackie Chan sought like a blessing. "There's something you need to understand about Silent Thunder," Chen said finally, his voice hollow. "It's not just a fighting style. It's a philosophy of violence that treats the human soul like raw material to be shaped." David leaned forward, but Chen held up a hand. "Master Lu Zhaojun taught me the forms in Hong Kong when I was 23. Younger than you. I thought I understood the warnings." Chen's fingers found the jade pendant at his throat. The early levels seem harmless, beautiful even, flowing movements that channel aggression into perfect control. Jackie mastered the first 3 levels in 6 months. Natural talent like I'd never seen. The shop's fluorescent light flickered, casting brief shadows across Chen's face. "But the higher forms, they require you to surrender pieces of yourself, your hesitation, your compassion, your ability to distinguish between protection and destruction." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Master Lu called it the warrior's burden, the knowledge that true mastery meant becoming something inhuman. David's camera bag sat forgotten at his feet. "That's what's happening to Jackie. What's happening to Jackie is worse." Chen moved around the counter, needing distance from the tablet and its terrible revelations. Someone is teaching him the forbidden sequences without the proper foundation. The psychological preparation that takes years. It's like performing surgery with a chainsaw. He stopped in front of the wall where Mrs. Chen's dried chrysanthemums hung in neat bundles. She'd always insisted they brought good luck, drove away negative energy. Now they seemed fragile as paper, powerless against the darkness that had found its way into his sanctuary. "When I brought the knowledge to America, I swore I would never teach the killing forms, never pass on that particular poison." Chen's laugh was bitter as old tea. "I thought I was being responsible. I thought I could use the beauty of Silent Thunder without unleashing its hunger. But your son—" "My son died because I was arrogant." The words came out sharp enough to cut. "Dao Ming wanted to learn the higher forms, begged me to teach him the sequences I'd shown Jackie. I refused, told him he wasn't ready, that some knowledge was too dangerous." Chen's hands clenched into fists, muscle memory threatening to slip into the preparatory stance for Iron River Palm before he forced himself still. So he tried to learn them on his own. Studied footage, broke down the movements frame by frame. The night he died, he was attempting the lightning fall sequence during a wire stunt, a technique that requires absolute spiritual balance. The shop's air conditioning cycled off, leaving them in a silence so complete Chen could hear David's shallow breathing. He fell wrong. 28 feet onto a concrete floor because he was channeling the mental state of a killer while hanging from cables 50 feet in the air. Chen's voice cracked. The silent thunder forms had confused his reflexes, made him trust in abilities he didn't possess. My son died reaching for power I'd denied him, poisoned by knowledge I'd tried to keep pure. David's face had gone pale. Jesus Christ. After the funeral, I burned everything. Notes, training videos, photographs. Tried to erase every trace of what I'd brought to this country. Chen turned back to face the young filmmaker. But you can't burn knowledge that lives in your bones. Can't destroy forms that are carved into your nervous system like grooves in a record. He gestured toward the tablet. Whoever is teaching Jackie knows exactly what they're doing. They're using the forbidden sequences to remake him, turn him into a weapon. And they sent you that footage because they wanted me to see the results. Why? David's voice was hoarse. What do they want? Chen moved to the shop's front window, peering through the security grate at Grant Avenue's empty sidewalks. Chinatown at night felt different than during the day. Older, more watchful, full of shadows that might hide either friends or enemies. Master Lu warned me once that silent thunder chooses its own students, that the knowledge seeks out vessels strong enough to contain it. Chen's breath fogged the glass. I think someone has been hunting practitioners for years, finding masters, learning fragments, piecing together the complete system. You think they killed your teacher? The question hit like a physical blow. Chen had wondered the same thing when word reached him that Master Lu had died in a Hong Kong hospital, alone and raving about darkness that moved like water. The official cause was listed as stroke, but the old master had been in perfect health just months before. I think, Chen said slowly, that Jackie isn't the first student they've corrupted. And I think they've been saving me for last. David stood up, his movements sharp with sudden understanding. Because you know the complete system. You could teach them everything. Chen nodded, watching a cat slink between parked cars, hunting something invisible in the darkness. Or I could stop them, if I was willing to become the thing I've spent 15 years running from. Outside, the cat pounced on its prey. The sound it made was barely audible through the glass, but Chen heard it anyway. The small, sharp cry of something being consumed. The cat's cry still echoed in Chen's ears when David's phone buzzed. The young filmmaker glanced at the screen, and his face went white. Mr. Chen. David's voice was barely a whisper. There's another video. Chen's stomach dropped as David fumbled with the tablet, his fingers trembling against the screen. The new footage was higher quality, professionally shot with multiple camera angles. Jackie stood in what looked like an empty warehouse, facing a figure whose face remained carefully obscured by shadows. But Chen didn't need to see the instructor's face. He recognized the voice immediately. Again, Jackie. Feel the thunder root flowing through your bones. Let it remake you. The tablet slipped from Chen's nerveless fingers, clattering against the floor. That voice, calm, patient, tinged with the same Hong Kong accent that had once guided Chen through his first faltering attempts at silent thunder forms. Master Lu? David's eyes darted between Chen and the fallen tablet. I thought you said he was dead. Chen's world tilted sideways. For 15 years, he'd carried the guilt of his teacher's death, had convinced himself that Master Lu's final ravings about darkness were the confused words of a dying man. But the voice on that recording was unmistakable, unchanged by time or supposed death. He is dead. Chen's words came out mechanical, distant. I saw the death certificate, the hospital records. But even as he spoke, memories began reshaping themselves with sickening clarity. Master Lu's funeral, a closed casket affair that Chen had been too grief-stricken to question. The way other students had avoided eye contact, speaking in whispers about arrangements and necessary departures. The suspicious timing of the old master's death, just weeks after Chen had written that desperate letter describing Dao Ming's accident and his own decision to abandon the art forever. David retrieved the tablet with shaking hands. Mr. Chen, if your teacher is alive, then I've been played for 15 years. The revelation hit Chen like a physical blow. The guilt, the exile, the belief that my silence was protecting people. all of it orchestrated. On the screen, Jackie moved through advanced forms that should have taken decades to master, his movements guided by the patient voice of a man Chen had mourned, the same voice that had once whispered to a young Chen that silent thunder was a gift too precious to waste on a world that feared true strength. He let me think I'd killed my student, Chen breathed. Let me carry that weight while he, disappeared? Started recruiting new vessels? The shop's familiar walls suddenly felt like the bars of a cage. Mrs. Chen's dried flowers, the carefully arranged tea tins, the life he'd built from shame and penance, all of it had been an elaborate prison designed by the one person Chen had trusted above all others. Jackie's not his first new student, is he? David's voice cut through Chen's spiraling thoughts. Chen forced himself to focus on the tablet screen, studying the warehouse backdrop and camera work. Professional lighting, expensive equipment, the kind of setup that required serious funding. No, this is too sophisticated, too well planned. He's been building something for years. A new horrible thought struck him. The others you contacted, Tommy, Maria, Richard, if they're scared, it's not because they're hiding, it's because they've been contacted too. Recruited or threatened or… Chen's voice trailed off as the full scope of Master Lu's deception became clear. David's phone buzzed again. Another message, another video file downloading automatically. Chen watched the progress bar with growing dread. He's been watching us, Chen whispered. This whole conversation, this meeting, he arranged it all. The new video opened with a wide shot of Chen's tea shop, filmed from across Grand Avenue. The timestamp showed tonight's date, just 2 hours ago. The camera zoomed in on the shop's front window, where Chen's silhouette was clearly visible through the security grate. Then Master Lu's voice, as calm and patient as ever, my dear student. 15 years is a long time to wait, but some lessons require proper aging. Are you finally ready to learn why I saved you for last? The video cut to black, replaced by a simple text message. Pacific Warehouse District, Pier 33. 1 hour. Come alone, or Jackie's next lesson will be his final graduation. Chen stared at the screen, understanding with crystal clarity that his exile had never been about guilt or redemption. It had been about preparation. Master Lu had needed his most gifted student isolated, desperate, carrying just enough pain to make him pliable when the time came. 15 years, Chen said aloud, his voice hollow with betrayal. 15 years of believing I was protecting the world from dangerous knowledge, when really I was just being kept in reserve. Outside, the cat had finished with its prey and disappeared into the shadows. The street was empty again, but Chen no longer believed in the safety of solitude. His teacher was alive, and the real lesson was finally about to begin. Chen stared at the message for a full minute, watching the cursor blink after final graduation like a heartbeat counting down to disaster. The words blurred as 15 years of carefully constructed lies crumbled around him. You can't go, David said, his voice sharp with panic. It's obviously a trap. Everything has been a trap. Chen's fingers found the jade pendant at his throat, the one Master Lu had given him decades ago as a symbol of their bond. Now it felt like a collar. My exile, my guilt, even this shop. He needed me broken down, isolated, carrying enough shame to make me compliant when he finally called. The shop's silence pressed against them. Chen moved through the familiar space, but everything looked different now. The tea tins arranged just so, the dried flowers, the carefully maintained distance from his former life. It had all been a performance for an audience of one, a master manipulator who'd been watching from the shadows for 15 years. What does he want from you? David asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. Completion. Chen pulled down a tin of oolong from the highest shelf, his movements automatic. Inside, wrapped in silk, lay the one thing he'd never been able to burn, his original training notes, written in Master Lu's precise calligraphy. Silent Thunder has 17 levels. I only learned 14 before Master Lu supposedly died. He spent 15 years gathering practitioners, extracting fragments, rebuilding the complete system. Chen unwrapped the silk with reverent care. The rice paper was yellowed with age, covered in elegant brushstrokes that detailed techniques capable of stopping a heart with a touch. But he needs someone who learned the forms correctly, who understands the philosophical framework, someone who can teach the highest levels without destroying the student's mind. You're talking about Jackie. I'm talking about an army. Chen's voice was hollow. Jackie is just the prototype, the proof of concept. If Master Lu can corrupt someone that pure, that disciplined, then he can remake anyone. David's camera bag caught Chen's eye, equipment that could document whatever was about to happen, create evidence of crimes the world didn't have words for yet. But Chen knew his former teacher too well. Master Lu wouldn't have survived this long by leaving witnesses. Call the police, David said desperately. And tell them what? That my dead martial arts instructor is using forbidden kung fu to brainwash movie stars? Chen laughed bitterly. They'd lock me up for psychiatric evaluation. The shop's phone rang, cutting through their conversation like a blade. Chen stared at it, knowing who would be on the other end, dreading the sound of that familiar voice in his sanctuary. He answered on the fourth ring. Wei Ming. The voice was exactly as Chen remembered. Warm, paternal, touched with the authority of someone who'd never been denied anything. You've grown old hiding in that little shop. Master Lu. The title felt like poison on Chen's tongue. 15 years is a long time to spend dead. Death is just another form of preparation, my dear student. Like exile, like guilt, like the beautiful sorrow you've carried over young Dao Ming's accident. The words were delivered with surgical precision, each one calculated to inflict maximum psychological damage. Chen gripped the phone so hard his knuckles cracked. You killed him. You let my son die to keep me under control. I let your son make his own choices, just as I'm letting you make yours now. Master Lu's voice carried the faint sound of wind. He was speaking from the pier, waiting in the darkness. Come alone, Wei Ming. Bring the complete notes you've hidden all these years. It's time to finish your education. And if I refuse? Then tomorrow morning, the world will watch Jackie Chan murder someone on live television, and the footage will show him smiling while he does it. The line crackled with static. Silent thunder is hungry, Wei Ming. I've fed it scraps for 15 years, but it requires a feast. Jackie's soul will sustain it nicely if you force me to complete his corruption. The connection ended, leaving Chen staring at dead air. Through the shop window, he could see Grant Avenue stretching toward the bay, toward the warehouses where his past waited to devour his future. David was watching him with desperate hope. There has to be another way. Chen folded the training notes carefully, slipping them into his jacket pocket. They felt heavier than they should, weighted with the knowledge of what they could create in the wrong hands. Master Lu made one mistake. He thinks 15 years of guilt have made me weak, haven't they? Chen moved to the shop's back room, to the locked cabinet he hadn't opened in 5 years. Inside, wrapped in black silk, lay the tools of his former trade, steel rings worn smooth by decades of practice, weighted chains that could crush bone, and beneath them all, a simple cloth bag that contained his father's knuckle guards. He's about to learn, Chen said quietly, that shame and weakness are not the same thing. The warehouse district waited, and with it, the reckoning that had been 15 years in the making. Climax. The fog rolled in from the bay as Chen walked through the warehouse district, each footstep echoing off wet concrete like a countdown to judgment. The weight of his father's knuckle guards pressed against his ribs, a reminder of the violence he'd spent 15 years trying to forget. Behind him, David's footsteps had fallen silent 10 blocks ago. Chen had made the young filmmaker promise to stay behind, to call the authorities if he didn't return by dawn. Some confrontations required solitude. Pier 33 stretched into the darkness like an accusation, its rusted pylons disappearing into black water. The warehouse at its end squatted against the night sky, windows dark except for a single rectangle of yellow light. Chen approached with the measured pace of a man walking to his own execution, feeling Master Lu's presence like heat radiating from a forge. The door stood open. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed over a space cleared for combat. Exercise mats arranged in precise circles. Jackie Chan knelt in the center position, his back straight, his breathing controlled, his eyes closed in meditation that looked disturbingly like surrender. The movie star's face held an expression Chen had never seen before. absolute serenity touched with something that might have been hunger. Punctual as always, Wei Ming. Master Lu stepped from the shadows, and Chen's heart nearly stopped. 15 years had changed the old master less than they'd changed Chen himself. Lu's hair had gone completely white, but his movements remained fluid as water, dangerous as lightning. He wore traditional training clothes in midnight black, and his smile was exactly as Chen remembered. Paternal warmth concealing surgical precision. "You look well for a dead man," Chen said, stopping just inside the doorway. The warehouse felt like a trap, but staying outside would have been cowardice. "Death is merely another kind of exile. I've been patient, Wei Ming, gathering fragments, studying possibilities, waiting for my most gifted student to ripen properly." Lu's gaze moved over Chen with the attention of a sculptor examining marble. "Guilt has made you harder, more focused. Pain is such an excellent teacher." Chen's hand found the cloth bag containing his father's knuckle guards, drawing strength from their familiar weight. "You murdered my son. I allowed your son to make choices. Just as I allowed you to flee to America, to hide behind tea and shame, to convince yourself that knowledge could be buried." Lu gestured toward Jackie, still kneeling in perfect stillness. "Look at what proper instruction can achieve. Mr. Chan came to me broken by violence, seeking peace. I gave him something better, purpose. You gave him corruption. I gave him completion." Lu moved closer, his footsteps silent on the concrete. "Silent thunder was never meant to be hidden, Wei Ming. It was meant to be shared, to remake this weak world into something worthy of true strength. You've seen the footage. You know what Jackie has become." Chen studied his former teacher's face, searching for the man who'd once guided him through his first halting attempts at Iron River Palm. That master was gone, replaced by something that wore his skin like a costume. "When did you decide to become this?" "When I realized that students like you would always choose comfort over truth." Lu's voice hardened. "You had the complete system, Wei Ming. 17 levels of the most perfect martial art ever conceived. And what did you do with that gift? You fled, you hid, you let fear make you small." The accusation hit like a physical blow, because part of it was true. Chen had run, had chosen exile over confrontation, had let guilt replace responsibility. But 15 years of shame had also taught him something Lu had never understood, that true strength sometimes meant restraint. "I chose to protect people from what we could create," Chen said quietly. "You chose to waste everything I taught you." Lu's stance shifted almost imperceptibly, weight flowing to the balls of his feet. "But waste can be recycled, Wei Ming. Bring me the complete notes. Teach Jackie the final sequences. Help me build something magnificent from the ashes of your cowardice." Chen pulled his father's knuckle guards from their cloth bag, slipping them over his fingers with the reverence of a priest donning sacred vestments. The metal was warm to the touch, heated by 15 years of waiting. "I brought you something better than notes, Master Lu." "And what is that?" Chen settled into horse stance, feeling decades of muscle memory align his spine, distribute his weight, prepare his body for the dance of violence. His hands rose to the preparatory position for Silent Thunder's first form, the foundation sequence Lu had taught him on a summer morning 30 years ago, when the world was young and knowledge seemed innocent. "I brought you a demonstration," Chen said, his voice carrying the authority of absolute certainty, of why some knowledge should stay buried. Lu's eyes widened with something that might have been recognition or anticipation. Behind him, Jackie's breathing remained steady, but Chen caught the slight tension in the younger man's shoulders, the body's involuntary response to proximity to violence. The reckoning began. The first exchange lasted 3 seconds and changed everything. Lu moved like memory made flesh, his opening sequence flowing from Silent Thunder's 7th form, the level Chen had been struggling to master when the old man supposedly died. But 15 years of exile had taught Chen something his teacher hadn't anticipated: how to fight like a man with nothing left to lose. Chen's father's knuckle guards caught Liu's strike at the wrist, redirecting the force into empty air, while Chen's left hand found the pressure point beneath his former master's collarbone. The impact should have dropped Liu to his knees. Instead, the old man smiled. "You've been practicing," Lu said, his voice conversational despite the bruise already flowering on his throat. Good. I'd hate for this to be disappointing. They separated, circled, came together again in a blur of motion that would have been invisible to untrained eyes. Chen fought with desperate precision, drawing on techniques he'd refined in 1,000 sleepless nights, movements honed by guilt and sharpened by solitude. But Lu fought with the confidence of a man who'd had 15 years to prepare for this exact moment. The warehouse echoed with the percussion of flesh meeting flesh, the whistle of displaced air, the sharp crack of metal against bone. Chen's knuckle guards left scores across Lu's forearms, but the old master absorbed the damage with the detached interest of a scholar observing interesting data. You're still holding back, Lu observed, landing a strike that sent Chen stumbling across the exercise mats, still afraid of what you might become if you truly commit to the art. Chen tasted blood, felt his ribs protest with each breath. His teacher was right. Some part of him was still hesitating, still flinching away from the killing techniques that Silent Thunder demanded. 15 years of serving tea and arranging flowers had softened edges that Lu had kept razor sharp. Perhaps a demonstration of commitment would help. Lu turned toward Jackie, who remained kneeling in perfect meditation. The old master's hand rose in the preparatory position for White Crane Takes Flight, a technique Chen had only seen described in the forbidden texts. A killing stroke that stopped the heart without leaving a mark. No. Chen's voice cracked like a whip. He threw himself forward, abandoning defense entirely, his father's knuckle guard seeking the point behind Lu's ear where a precise strike could end everything. For a moment, he thought he might succeed. His teacher was off balance, focused on Jackie, vulnerable. Then Lu's hand closed around Chen's wrist with the inexorable pressure of a vice. There, the old master said softly. Now you're fighting like you mean it. The throw that followed sent Chen across the warehouse like a discarded toy. He hit the concrete wall hard enough to crack it, slumped to the floor with his vision swimming and his left shoulder screaming in protest. Through the haze of pain, he watched Lu return his attention to Jackie. Mr. Chen has been very patient, Lu said, his hand still raised in the killing position. But patience has limits, and some lessons require permanent instruction. Chen forced himself to his feet, ignoring the way his ribs ground against each other with each movement. His father's knuckle guards were slick with his own blood, but they still fit his hands like destiny. You want the complete system? Chen called out, his voice echoing off the warehouse walls. You want the final 3 levels of Silent Thunder? Lu paused, his hand still hovering inches from Jackie's neck. You're hardly in a position to negotiate, Wei Ming. The notes you want, they're incomplete. Chen wiped blood from his mouth, tasting copper and defeat and something else. Something that might have been freedom. I've been carrying the real secret for 15 years and you've been too arrogant to see it. The old master's eyes narrowed. Explain. Chen laughed, the sound harsh in the sterile air. You think Silent Thunder has 17 levels because that's what my father told your teacher, and what he told you, and what you told me. But my father was protecting the final secret the same way I've been protecting it from you. What secret? Chen settled into horse stance one final time, feeling his grandfather's words echo across generations. The deadliest technique is the one you choose not to use. Silent Thunder has 18 levels, Chen said quietly. And the last one isn't about killing. It's about stopping. It's about choosing restraint when destruction would be easier. It's about understanding that true mastery means knowing when not to fight. Lu's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, and finally rage so pure it transformed him into something inhuman. You're lying. Chen walked forward, his hands open, his father's knuckle guards glinting in the fluorescent light. Then kill me and find out. For the first time in 15 years, Master Lu hesitated. And in that moment of uncertainty, Jackie Chan opened his eyes.